Hi, the SI meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Friday, January 18th. Well, we've undergone a major sudden stratospheric warming event in the northern latitudes over the last several weeks. It has kind of spilled over into the mid-latitudes. Warming began in the upper part of the atmosphere, first over Asia towards the latter part of December, and it is really continuing right now. It's expanded from the Asia part of the globe into the northern latitudes and is now spilling over actually into the eastern and central part of the U.S. at higher levels. We'll take a look at this 30-day loop in a moment. One of the questions being asked is what kind of impact this stratospheric warming event will have on temperature pattern here in the eastern and central part of the U.S. Of course, we've had quite a mild winter so far in the eastern U.S. with an above normal December and above normal first half of January. But there certainly are some clues that this particular stratospheric warming event could have a significant impact on the temperature pattern here in the eastern U.S. based on what's happened in the recent past. We had a couple dramatic stratospheric warming events that we're going to take a look at over the next few minutes. One occurred during the wintertime of 1984, 1985, and then another one in the wintertime of 1998 to 1999, and both of those give us some clues perhaps as to what kind of an impact this current stratospheric warming event will have. A couple areas to notice before we start this 30-day loop of the temperature pattern at 10 millibars. Notice this is Asia right here, and this is where the dramatic warming will begin, and here's the eastern and central part of the U.S. right here, so kind of focus in on that when we start the 30-day loop, because you can notice just in the last few days there's warming that's kind of exploding right now above our heads here in the eastern and central part of the U.S. at the highest levels of the atmosphere. And here's the loop. This is showing the temperature anomalies over the last 30 days, ending just a couple of days ago at 10 millibars, the highest part of the atmosphere, the stratosphere. And again, here's the explosion of temperatures here over Asia, and then kind of spilled to the north and encompassed the entire polar region. And just in the last few days over the central and eastern U.S., there's quite a warming part of the stratosphere. In other words, it's not done yet. This began in the latter parts of December and is really kind of an ongoing event here with this dramatic warming in the upper part of the atmosphere. Well, before we kind of focus in on those recent events in 84, 85, and then 98, 99, let's continue to recap the current event. This is the temperature analysis anomaly chart for back in December, about a month ago, at, again, 10 millibars, the highest part of the atmosphere. Quite cold everywhere, almost everywhere here. Not too unusual, again, for this time of the year. Normally you have a cold polar vortex at or near the North Pole, and this is the North Pole right here. Now notice just a month later, dramatic change, and that's where we stand now. This is from just a few days ago. Dramatic warming here near the poles, and that polar vortex kind of split into two pieces, one over here and another part over here. So again, a significant change in temperatures in much of the northern hemisphere over the last several weeks. It began to warm in the latter stages of December and is really continuing right now. It's kind of an ongoing event several weeks later. Well, now let's take a look at one of these recent historic events here, and we'll jump to back in time to November of 1984. Again, looking at the 10 millibar level up in the stratosphere. At that time we had, again, the kind of the conventional polar vortex sitting right over the North Pole, but then just a month later, a dramatic change, very similar to this particular event here that we've experienced over the last several weeks. Again, you had much colder, and about a month later, much warmer near the North Pole. Now, what kind of impact did this have on temperatures? That's the clue here that I want to take a look at, these recent events, to see perhaps if we can give some kind of a clue as to what's going to happen here. And sure enough, this is the temperature pattern over the U.S. for December of 1984. Very similar to what we've experienced this particular winter, with much warmer than normal conditions here in the eastern and central parts of the U.S. Now, a month later, complete flip. This is again after the stratospheric warming event, several weeks after it began warming up in the upper part of the atmosphere. The temperature pattern went from this to this. This is January 1985. Those of you old enough to remember January of 1985, it was a very cold month, probably one of the peak of that cold wave was right around the inauguration, the second inauguration of Ronald Reagan, January 20th, 1985. It was so cold that many of the events, especially all the outdoor events, were called off with temperatures hovering not far from zero in much of the mid-Atlantic, and it was a very cold month. So this particular stratospheric warming event had dramatic effects, and not just a one-time cold air outbreak. It lasted for several weeks in this particular case, and so that was also the result of this next one. Let's now look at the 1998 time frame. This is back to the 10 millibar map of November 1998. Again, cold polar vortex, not too unusual for the wintertime. 30 days later, approximately, a complete flip here. This is December of 1998. So we just looked at the stratospheric temperatures in November of 1998, and here it flips similar to this pattern, similar to the pattern from the 84-85 warming event. Now, what about temperatures in this case? Well, again, here are the temperatures in the central and eastern U.S. December of 1998, warmer than normal in the central and eastern U.S. What happens after the stratospheric warming event? A dramatic flip, very similar to what's going on right now. We think that beginning next week, the temperatures flipped in the central and eastern part from way above normal to way below normal. Again, in this case, it lasted for several weeks. So we have some clues by looking at some recent history, major stratospheric warming events. First of all, some similarities. It took several weeks for the stratospheric warming event to actually unfold, and then several weeks later the impact occurred. And in both of those recent history cases, it looked like the impact was fairly long-lasting, not just one outbreak, but multiple cold air outbreaks. What does all this mean? Well, beginning early next week, we have quite a flip in the temperature pattern here to much colder than normal, moving into the eastern and central part of the U.S. early next week, and it certainly lasts right through the middle part of next week. And all these signs point to the idea that we're going to have multiple cold air outbreaks. It doesn't mean we're going to be below normal every single day. That's a very unlikely scenario. It does mean, I believe, that the second half of January, well into February, will probably have colder than normal temperatures with multiple Arctic outbreaks right into the month of February, well into the month of February, if past is any clue as to what may go on in the future. We'll continue to monitor all of this, of course, here at the SIweather.com over the next several days. That's it for now. I'm the SI meteorologist, Paul Dorian.